If economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. No, globalization increases a supply of workers and thus reduces the value each worker has to a corporation. In a market, if there are more workers than jobs, then the workers will be forced to compete for lower and lower wages in order to earn anything at all. Just look at Bangladesh. Then just set a minimum wage? The minimum wage also destroys jobs by forcing business owners to pay a wage the worker may not be worth, and therefore the business owner may not bother offering the job in the first place. Oh, poor billionaire business owners being forced to pay a living wage, boo. We should just nationalize the corporations and guarantee a living wage and jobs to those who need them. Don't even get me started on all the problems that would cause. Just look at Venezuela. No one has the right to a job, everyone provides a service that others are willing to pay for according to how important it is to the person paying. If the service you are providing isn't worth more to someone than what they're paying you, then try to find someone who is willing to pay you what you think your work is worth, and if you can't, that's a good sign your work isn't worth very much. How can you say that someone working 9 to 5 every day, breaking their back just to get paid a wage that barely covers rent, isn't worth more? Not all work is equally valuable. You wouldn't pay Gordon Ramsay the same as someone who just flips burgers just because they work the same hours. I'm sure McDonald's could afford to pay their employees a living wage for the hard work they all put in. You shouldn't have to be Gordon Ramsay to provide for your family. Maybe McDonald's could, but the guy who just started a burger restaurant after saving for years probably won't be able to pay his employees £10 an hour just for flipping burgers. If you force him to, he will just go out of business and the employee will be forced to go work at McDonald's. He might get £10 an hour now, but you will have just given a global corporation a monopoly on fast food as well.
I'd always support my country, whether it was right or wrong. No, because those in charge may not be doing what is right for the nation. So, would you support your nation if it was good for the country but also immoral? My country is me, people like me, experiences and lives like mine. Choosing my country over morality is an act of loyalty. It may not always be right, but it's to preserve my culture. I'm not choosing immorality, I'm choosing to support my country when it is doing what is good for my country. Everyone did what was best for their own countries, then over time everyone would have a unique, independent, self-sufficient culture and nation. If everyone did what was best for their own country, there wouldn't be much left very quickly. If a leader decides to invade a smaller nation for its resources, that will benefit his country but would destroy another country in the process. Would you support that? Only if it was necessary to preserve my country. If my country were weak and needed resources to become strong so that it could fight off stronger nations, then yes, I would support it. If everyone acts like you, then soon there won't be anyone left but the biggest, meanest nation. But if no one thinks like you, then everyone has to think like me.
Our race has many superior qualities, compared with other races. No, my race has advantages that were evolved and developed to solve different problems than other races. Other races will have different advantages, and so a variety of races creates a variety of advantages. If a nation has a variety of races, it will have more solutions to problems and increase its prosperity. Some races may have some advantages, but some races have succeeded far beyond others. This means the advantages of some races are more valuable than others. The inequality of success is due to coincidence and oppression. Certain races had the benefit of being in the right places at the right time and so were able to gain an advantage long enough to suppress the success of other races. If all races could develop free from the influence and oppression of other races, then they would all succeed equally in their own right. All races have experienced oppression in their history. Some races were able to overcome theirs and find success despite it all. The Jews were more oppressed than anyone, and yet they have always overcome it and thrived. Recent historical oppression is far more potent and is embedded so deep within our culture that it isn't comparable to the oppression of those who now oppress. You cannot trivialize the oppression of the past. It might not have been as institutional, but it made up for it in brutality. Every challenge makes you stronger if you let it. If some races are allowing their oppression to overcome them, then it is because they are weak and lazy. That is just an excuse to hide the immorality. If one race is responsible for oppressing another race, then all efforts should be made to undo that oppression until all races can thrive in unison and create a better world together. Oppressors are always replaced by new oppressors who are usually more brutal than the last ones. If your oppression still allows you more than most, then you shouldn't tempt fate, because you will only trade Tsar for a Stalin.
People are ultimately divided more by class than by nationality. Yes, the wealthy live lives separate to the toils and struggles of the everyday worker. Workers or the world would relate more to the struggles of foreign workers than to the struggles of a boss who is from the same country. No. The culture of a nation is most greatly expressed in the average individual of that nation, and therefore the cultural differences would be greatest amongst the workers. If it were true that people are more divided by nationality than by class, then the Soviet Union would not have needed to resettle so many peoples. It also wouldn't have broken up into states with a cultural identity like it did. And yet it was the average soldiers in World War I who crossed into no man's land to break bread with fellow grunts on opposing armies, than the upper-class officers who had to threaten to kill them to stop it from happening. And it was those same soldiers who were willing to volunteer to run into certain death to protect their country and culture. They had been lied to by the upper classes in order to get them to sacrifice themselves. If that were true, then things would have deteriorated sooner. But the soldiers kept on, surviving hell by embracing in camaraderie and love for the homeland. If that were true, then officers wouldn't have had to point threaded to shoot the soldiers if they didn't follow orders. Every situation is a complicated mix of individuals with differing worldviews and character. Some men were motivated by love of country, others had to be motivated by fear for everyone to succeed. They fought because they thought there was danger where there wasn't any. They fought to save their friends and families, not for a king, queen or prime minister. Fantasies such as love of king and country are shattered by the harsh realities of war. It is in those moments when we see what truly separates people, and that is truth and lies, and those with power have a monopoly on that. Well, you would know all about that. When faced with certain annihilation, it was the communists who abandoned the class-based propaganda and embraced fantasies like nationalism in order to unite against the Nazis. No longer was it fight for communism and equality, but rather fight for the motherland. Sometimes, in order to motivate the uneducated masses, the state must motivate by arousing a primal need to protect one's tribe, but this is not sufficient to run a just and fair democracy. Classism is as tribal as nationalism. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation. Corporations will always seek to lower costs and increase profits any way they can. If they don't, then they will be outcompeted by those who do. If neither the customers nor the investors care enough about the environment to stop doing business with the corporations who damage the environment, then why should they stop? Why are the corporations held morally responsible when they are financed by a willing public? Capitalism is about supply and demand. If there is demand, there will be a supply, one way or another. All regulation does is give the government another tool which it can use to corrupt the free market to help their donors by squeezing competition and looking moral while they do it. So, are we just supposed to twiddle our thumbs and wait for everyone to do the right thing whilst the air is polluted, and the ocean turns to ash? You won't fix the problem with regulation, only delay it and pay the price of corrupting the market. The only way to have a smart and responsible market is to have a smart and responsible public. If people are educated by good schools, informed by honest media, and kept responsible by a culture that empowers individuals to sort out problems themselves rather than asking bureaucrats to do it, then the free market will solve everything. And has that ever actually happened? For short periods, but then it all goes to shit.
from each according to his ability, to each according to his need is a fundamentally good idea. No, you get what you earn and what other people are willing to pay you, anything else is theft. That's ridiculous. Not everyone is able to support themselves while others have more than they need. Why shouldn't we scrape off the excess to help those in need? If people need help, then it should be provided willingly, through charity. It should not be done by forcefully taking what others have earned through hard work and good choices and giving to those who aren't willing to even try working. That's just selfish. There is more than enough wealth to go around. Why should one person have a yacht while others can barely feed themselves? Then it should be done willingly. No amount of moral grandstanding can change the fact that any wealth taken by force of imprisonment is theft. You're being dramatic. If you want the wealth of others, then you either must convince them to give it to you for free or through a trade of goods and services. The rich redistribute their wealth by buying yachts and mansions which were built and sold by people with less wealth than them. Everyone should pay their fair share. We all benefit from a system that we must give back to for things to continue. If everyone must pay their fair share, then we should all pay the same percentage. That's fair. Why should someone have to give a larger percentage of what they have just because they've done well? That just punishes the successful for working harder than they need to, which is why communism never works. The rich should pay a larger portion because they can afford to. Just because some has more wealth than they can use doesn't give you the right to take it from them. How can we let people starve while there are billionaires flying around in private jets? Because they earned it, and people should be rewarded for aspiring to greater things. Most of their wealth comes from trading ones and zeros on a computer without any wealth being created. They are using their knowledge of money to make smart investments into the right companies so that those companies can grow and expand and create wealth, whether you can see it or not. And this system of gluttony has resulted in far fewer empty mouths than any other system.